Hello and welcome. Today's topic of discussion will be child abuse, specifically neglect. In our next slide, we'll be providing a video on child neglect. See if you can spot the different ways in which a child can be neglected. How did we go identifying the different ways a child could be neglected? In order to understand child neglect, we need to have a definition. The Australian Centre of Child Protection defines the basic concept of neglect as the absence of sufficient attention, responsiveness, and protection to appropriate age and needs, in this case, for a child. Unfortunately, in comparison to other forms of child abuse, neglect is the most common form of maltreatment. Child neglect has 5 subcategories that are requirements to understanding the foundational concept of neglect. These 5 subcategories include supervisory, physical, medical, educational, and emotional. We first have supervisory neglect. This is the inadequate supervision and control of a child. Physical neglect is next, with no provision of food, clothing, or shelter. We then have medical neglect, which is the denial or delay of healthcare. Educational neglect is defined by formal education not being met. Lastly, the emotional neglect category refers to the careless, nurturing, or the lack of affection. The effects of child neglect then contribute to many changes in characteristics, psychologically. These include anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, difficulty making and maintaining relationships. Behaviour is then influenced by neglect and is presented in children through eating disorders, trouble sleeping, and unfortunately absence from school. Sadly, 75% of children who die of neglect as well as abuse are under the age of 13. This percentage is a high issue and is an issue that needs to be addressed. It is difficult to measure the extent or severity of child neglect. Currently, the only method of understanding the extent of child neglect is based off the cases reported by adults. Individuals who are affected are mainly children. Throughout a child's development, they experience many relationships within their environment. A child who has been abused through neglect will then develop unhealthy relationships. We have included a statistics and facts page. This provides information on child neglect that we may not have already touched over. First, we have a statistic that 1 in 10 children have experienced neglect. We then found out that 60% of neglect is a factor of serious case reviews. Within a home, neglect is the most common reason for taking child protection action. And out of 33% of contacts to the NSPC's helpline, they were all related to neglect. Child neglect is very preventable through sport and education. We can educate parents on basic child needs, maybe either physical or emotional. We can also provide support or further assistance for parents dealing with issues such as stress, perhaps substance abuse, poverty, and even depression. Who can help? Below are a few foundations that have been listed, such as Australian Childhood Foundation, Childwise, creating child-safe communities, and NAPCAN, preventing child abuse. With many more support lines and facilities, we can help rebuild relationships and stability. Thank you so much for listening. We hope we've provided information to inform as well as motivate individuals who may be affected in these circumstances. We hope they have understood and have been given the tools to make that change today.